Hello everyone, welcome back to the Hand Spinner Review Spot YouTube channel. You can click on the link in the description below to go to our Facebook page and check out all manner of updates for what's coming on the channel and old written reviews and that sort of thing. And please, if you feel so inclined, click that subscription button and the subscription bell just to keep up with what's going on here and to help us out. It really is appreciated and it does indeed help a great deal. So today, after much demand and for some reason I haven't got round to it yet, we're going to look at the thing that started the whole hand spinner scene, the whole reason why this channel even exists, and people are wandering around with the plastic bearing wraps and all that kind of thing. This is the Torqbar. Now this is an original solid body Torqbar from Scam Designs when it was called Scam, which is officially the worst brand name ever conceived, and since then it's switched to MD Engineering, which is a much better choice from my point of view. There have been a few small changes with the MD Engineering ones. They're very slightly smaller in general, but overall everything I have to say here should transition quite comfortably, and I've handled quite a few of the MD Engineering ones now, and there isn't a huge deal of difference, to be absolutely honest. So let's talk about the Torqbar. Right, first of all though, we'll have a quick look at some size comparisons. So there it is next to the stubby, probably its number one rival I would guess now. There it is next to the tri-stubby, and the Zero Feud compass, the Turnian, stick a, there we go, that's a United Machining bow tie in there, and a Vorso flat top. So there you go, that gives you quite a good idea. As you can see, it's longer than a stubby, but it is shorter than a compass. So that gives you quite a good idea really of where it sits in the general array of spinners that are now available. So this is in many ways, like I say, the design that started it all. Scott McCoskrie, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, developed this. It went viral around Instagram pretty quickly, and he had an awful lot of orders for the custom versions of these. And indeed, you will see some pretty extravagant customs out there. One of the instant ways you tend to see them is the fact that they normally have two screws here and here that will hold the weights on either side, and that enables Scott to make the flat section of the body out of one material and then do the weights in a different material, and then obviously the buttons as well, for the custom pieces. Now, I believe the books for the customs have been closed for a long time, and people are still waiting a very, very long time to get the ones that they have signed up for. But what he did do in the interim is he produced what he called the Torqbar SB, which is what I'm holding here. SB stands for solid body, and as you can probably imagine, that's because it's all one piece. Now, what did this bring to the table that made everyone love them and want them so much? And indeed, everyone who saw them seemed to think, yes, that is the solution to all of my problems. And they were probably right. Basically, it spins for a long time. It's attractive. I certainly think it's still one of the more attractive designs. And indeed, the fact that it's been cloned to within an inch of its life, sadly, is probably testament to that. And it just works. So let's have a look at the overall design. As you can see, there are two weights, there are two holes here. These are supplied with a little sort of keyring clip that can go into one of these holes. I'm not sure how many people have ever used those. I can't really imagine that, particularly when these were extremely rare. There was a stage, it almost seems laughable now, but there was a point in the hand spinner world where these were changing hands, just like this version here, were changing hands for over $1,000 because there was no supply, there was no one else making a readily available high quality hand spinner, and people were just desperate to get hold of them. So the demand completely outstripped supply, and they were really, really hard to get hold of. So I don't know that many people were using the little clip at that point because they'd have been quite worried, I think, about dinging them up and causing all sorts of problems. This one is in a blasted and tumbled finish, an awful lot of them were, and it's the most common version of these early Scam Designs ones. Since then, a lot more have been produced in the MD Engineering than were ever produced like this, but of the Scam Designs, an awful lot of them were made in brass and in this kind of finish. So as you can see, you have these raised weights, and over this flat body. It's become quite a ubiquitous thing. If you think of something like this, there's a lot of similarities involved in the overall approach. And it's just very pretty in general. Everything has a nice, relatively obtuse chamfer around it, and the buttons are small, and we'll get back to that, and they're set low in the body, and they're just very, very smooth concave. They're really nicely made, and the whole thing has a reassuring feel of quality about it, and I think that's probably another reason why they really took off and why it's given rise to so many other designs. So, yeah, that's how it works. What was it all running on? And this is probably, I think, the biggest contribution, as much as anything else, certainly, that Scott and his Torqbar really brought. And that is the fact that it's running on an R188 8-ball hybrid ceramic bearing, which of course is all but ubiquitous in the market now. It's the number one thing being used, and with good reason. It's a very good bearing, and the ones that he sourced were really nice. The fact that they were fitted really, really well, the tolerances were good. It's all good stuff. You'll also see that the actual bearing is slightly thicker than the body, and this is kind of an interesting point which some people probably won't care about, but I do because I'm just that crazy. Basically there's a little lip that comes up from the body, and hopefully you can just about see that. So the bearing is actually sat within the body itself, but the actual body comes up around the bearing, and then the buttons have a recess inside them which sort of sits over that, so it shields the bearing a little bit more than most modern designs. It reminds me a little bit actually of the Casfly Crusader. They have a similar setup with the bearing cage that they have in theirs, and it does seem to avoid lint and debris getting into this bearing quite as much as some other more modern designs, so that's a plus point. And then in use, it's a lovely long spinner. It's a very, very, very smooth spinner. Even now, you'd struggle to find anything much smoother than this, to be absolutely honest. There's only a handful of things that are ever any smoother than a good Torqbar. It creates a nice pattern when it's spinning because of the different levels of the terraces. It's just really nice to use. I understand completely, and I pay homage to the fact that this really created the hand spinner scene because it was a quality design and quality product straight away. So why aren't they as ubiquitous as they used to be? Well, partly it's because they were hard to get, and while Scott and his team were trying to get these onto the market, an awful lot of other makers, to be absolutely honest, just outstripped them and made arguably better designs and made them much more quickly, much more available, with, I would say, personally having experienced it, more responsive customer service, and that really left the Torqbar floundering a little bit. It's still a ubiquitous design, they still sell very well, but it could, in my mind, have been absolutely the market leader without any shadow of a doubt, and I mean a runaway market leader. And instead, it's not maybe considered the top-end piece that it could have been. Indeed, designs like the Rotorblade Stubby have really, at very, very least, equalled, if not surpassed, the progress of the Torqbar. And indeed, we're now sat at a point where you can get stubbies in every available finish, and in amazing exotic materials, and you've got Rick at Zero Feud making his compass in Mokatai and all that sort of stuff. And as far as we've got with the Torqbar, there's some patina versions, some two-tone versions. Nothing really mind-blowing, with the exception of the impossible to actually get customs that have come out. There's nothing production-wise to rival any of those aforementioned brands and what they're doing. And then we come to, perhaps I think, the biggest problem with the Torqbar in the current market, and that's just the ergonomics because of the grips. As you might be able to see, this is the king of the pinched grip in the hand spinner world. You end up very, very close around the bearing. It's not uncomfortable, but what it does mean is it feels a little unstable, particularly under a powerful launch. It's possible to torque the Torqbar out of your hands, and that's something which lots of people have talked about, lots of people have found, and it remains a bit of a problem. Now, obviously there's lots of aftermarket buttons, and indeed, finally, MD Engineering did come out with some double stack buttons for these that enable you to table spin them, which of course you couldn't do with these very, very low ones, which is another downside. But also just for them to be, a little bit more ergonomic and have a little bit more space. Unfortunately, they're still not as readily available as people would like them to be. And while there are lots and lots of buttons that fit these, indeed, those buttons fit, stubby buttons fit, the original versions of those buttons from the aluminium United Machining bow tie fit. I mean, there are a whole range. Basically, almost any R188 button that doesn't have a larger diameter than that section there will fit one of these. However, it spoils the lines of the Torqbar to my eyes, and it just makes it a much less appealing thing to look at. Not everyone agrees with that, and indeed that's an aesthetic thing. It's completely subjective. You might love how a Torqbar looks with bigger buttons, and indeed I have had a set of POS blades, Bowcoat ones on here, and in fact if you go back in the channel, you'll see size comparisons in which I use this Torqbar but with these guys, and for whatever reason those look prettier on this to my eyes than a lot of others. But in general, just the fact that you're restricted by the width here, which I don't think brings an awful lot of improved ergonomics to the Torqbar anyway, just means that this doesn't sit within the modern market as well as some other designs. When you're using something like a stubby, there's a lot of real estate, it feels very comfortable. It's the same when you use something like a Turnian. These buttons feel large and accommodating and very secure, and it enables you to get lots of sort of ergonomic, forceful flick out of the actual piece. When you're using a Torqbar, the forward flick motion is not very comfortable, and part of that is down to the size of this body and the size of the buttons. So now that I've thoroughly rained on the Torqbar's parade, let's wrap this up, because it's turning into quite a long one, although it was always going to, considering how important this piece has been in the market. I have a great deal of respect for what was done to produce this piece, and the fact that it really created a market, which I really like, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have this channel and I wouldn't be talking to you now. But at the same time, I couldn't send someone out and say that this was something that I would suggest they get over and above other designs. It's a very good hand spinner. No question at all. It's still a very good hand spinner, and in some ways that deserves huge amounts of credit, considering this was the first, and for it to still stand up as a very good hand spinner, being the first, is a remarkable achievement, and I have a lot of admiration for that. But equally, I couldn't recommend that this would be the choice that I would make over many of the other things that I've shown in the video today. There's lots of makers out there that I think are outstripping this and leaping ahead of it. And it must be said, while I absolutely don't support clones, the cloning market for these probably doesn't help in that regard either. So there you have it. Mixed feelings, lots of admiration, but also some downsides for the Torqbar, and there you go. My longest one in a little while, I'm sure, but I think it deserved it. So thank you very much, guys. Catch you in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.